Alright, so everybody knows now that Keefe D has been arrested in the Tupac Shakur's 1996 slaying. But did you know that it was an investigation into Biggie Smalls' murder that led to detectives putting Keefe D in the middle of all this? And of course, he self-snitched, told on himself, and talked his way right into prison. But let's get into the details of how that investigation into the great Biggie Smalls' death led to where we are at now and where Keefe D sits right now. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. If you've never been here before, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Click the bell next to the subscribe button so you are notified every time a new video goes up on Hot Topics TV, BrainFLoTv. Alright, so according to MSN, the first arrest in the 1996 slaying of Tupac Shakur, that actually had its roots in the investigation of the killing of Biggie Smalls. So that shooting death of the hip-hop luminaries and rivals, we're talking about Tupac Shakur and Biggie Smalls. Tupac Shakur was shot and killed in Las Vegas, and Biggie Smalls was shot and killed in Los Angeles 6 months later. Those have always been culturally inseparable. And one man, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, found himself involved in both of those investigations. You might ask how. Today, after his arrest was announced yesterday, there are a lot of rumors online. There are a lot of people who are saying he's still the scapegoat. He ain't the one that set that all up. He was used. Higher powers wanted those two gone, Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur, and they used Keefe D and his people. He's now just the last man standing. Well, it's not quite like that. That story sounds a bit salacious, but here are the details. So on Friday, Keefe D was arrested and charged with murder, with prosecutors saying that he ordered and he masterminded the Tupac Shakur killing. So for a lot of you who only know that, oh, he got arrested, some people are saying, well, he might walk. Well, I'm telling you right now that his charges, he has been charged. He has been charged. And he has been charged, according to the prosecutors, for being the mastermind behind Tupac Shakur killing, and for being the one who put it together and the one who ordered it to be done. Now, retired Los Angeles police detective Greg Kading, who's been on this for a while, Greg Kading was assigned to investigate the slaying of Biggie Smalls, whose legal name, of course, everybody knows by now, is Christopher Wallace. And in 2009, he said today that in 2009, he interviewed Keefe D as a person of interest in the case. I don't know how he would become a person of interest in the case, but clues, evidence led them to him, Keefe D, in Biggie Smalls' murder as a person of interest in that case. He said that Keefe D had been at a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum that Biggie Smalls had just left when he was shot. So there you have it. And because, he was tied in from the Tupac Shakur stuff, the behind the scenes talk is that Keefe D was always under surveillance. He out in the streets doing his thing, but he was being watched. It's a person who you could label a confidential informant. Somebody said, where are you getting your information from? Keefe D wasn't no snitch. He wasn't lying to, he wasn't snitching to the police to get paid. I never said he was snitching to the police to get paid. He was making deals to save his ass, though. It's like you do dirt out in the streets, but when the police catch you and they take you to that little room, you end up saying, okay, I'm facing 10 years. If you could make my case go away, I'll tell you this, this, and that. What do you call that? And then you start telling on other people to get yourself free. Anyhow, Kading had helped to build, Kading is the detective, right? Kading had helped to build a federal drug case against Keefe D to get leverage over him, to compel him to talk to the Los Angeles police, who to this date have made no arrests in the Biggie Smalls case. Kading is admitting, this detective is admitting that he was a part of building a federal drug case against Keffe D because they couldn't get anything on him, but they knew he was into drugs. So they started tapping into his resources, tapping into his connect, tapping into his line, tapping into his workers, and boom, they were able to infiltrate his movement and build a case against him. Now, when this is the case that Keefe D spoke about, where he said in his book that he had a closed doors, behind the doors interview, sit down with feds and local police. And he detailed that it was about a drug case and he was facing a life sentence. So he made a deal. And the deal was that his case would go away. Right? All right. The detective said that in that same meeting, Keefe D confessed to his involvement in Tupac Shakur's case. This is way back when. So Keefe D been told them from back then. This is the reason why he was so, like, the way he was about speaking about this situation on camera. Because everybody watching him, watch the Vlad interview, watch all the other interviews he did, the Capone interviews, all the other interviews that he did on YouTube. Everybody that was watching it is like, this isn't normal. This man is telling stuff that could get him imprisoned for the rest of his life. Why is he telling all this now? Well, let's see why he was telling all that. He had leverage. So the detective said that back then, Keefe D confessed to his involvement in Tupac Shakur's case, and he gave them all the details of how he and his co-conspirators killed Tupac Shakur. He gave them all the details from back then. The detective, Kading, recalled that interview this Friday in an interview with the Associated Press. Now, Davis, which is Keefe D, who had immunity for what he said to the police in that interview, but he did not have any immunity for stuff that was said outside of it. Okay, so he went to that means anything that he said behind those closed doors to them in that interview and they recorded it, he could go back outside to the public and repeat those things, and he has immunity. They can't do anything to him. He already talked to them about it. He already gave them all the details. They recorded it and they held that. So when you see him doing these interviews and the things he was saying, this is the reason why he was able to say it. And we kept wondering, how come nobody is coming to arrest him yet? If he knows so much and he's detailing who was in the car, in the Cadillac and all that, he should be going to prison. But apparently they already knew that. So the law has already known for many years who killed Tupac Shakur and how he was killed. What led up to it. They had all the details. But they signed a deal with this guy behind those closed doors to give him immunity, but only for anything he said in that meeting. That means if there was any new information that he was talking about out in the public, they could come get him for that. But if he kept repeating what was said behind those closed doors, he already got immunity for that, so they can't do anything to him. The detective said that he went on to divulge many of the same details in documentaries, and they saw him. These law enforcement officials, they pay attention. They pay very close attention to all social media platforms. So, of course, when he's doing all these interviews, they're locked in because they're looking at it from the office like, isn't that Keefe D, the guy that we interviewed about the Tupac Shakur murder? Turn that up. Let me hear what he's saying. Oh, man, he's saying everything that he told us in that room, but we can't go get him. So they kept listening. They kept listening, hoping he would say something different, something new, something more incriminating. And he went on to do these interviews and to repeat the things that were said in that room in many of these online interviews, on podcasts, in a tell-all 2019 book that would give new life to the Las Vegas police probe and help lead to his grand jury indictment. So he went on to say even more. I guess the storyline was running out and he needed to add more to it. So he did that. And he released a book in 2019 and they picked that book up and they put that together with everything else he's been saying that wasn't said in that room that he had no immunity to. So, Davis has long been known to investigators as one of the 4 suspects that were identified early in the investigation. He isn't the accused gunman, but he was described as the group's ringleader by authorities at a new conference in court. Now, in Nevada, a defendant can be charged with a crime, including murder, if you help someone to commit the murder. And boom, this is where they got Keffe D at. Keffe D, Davis, who is now 60 years old, said in 2019 in his book, his memoir, which is called Compton Street Legend, he said that he provided the gun that was used during the drive-by where Tupac Shakur was killed. That piece of detail right there is not what he said in that room that he got immunity to. He just said, I was there, I was involved, I seen who do it. But when he wrote the book and went and said that he provided the murder weapon, it was a whole different ball game. You see, one little twist of details and it's a wrap. So Keefe D was arrested on Friday, which was September 29th, early Friday morning, while he was on a little walk near his house on the outskirts of Las Vegas, hours before prosecutors announced in court that a Nevada grand jury had indicted the self-described gangster on 1 count of murder with a deadly weapon. He is now in lockup, and he's due to appear in court sometime next week. The grand jury also voted to add a sentencing enhancement to the murder charge for gang activity, and that could add up to 20 additional years to what he will be already facing if he is convicted. Now, hundreds of pages of transcripts were released on Friday, and they provide a view into the first month of grand jury proceedings, which began in late July with testimony from former associates of Keefe D and friends of Tupac Shakur, and a slate of retired police officers that are involved in the case and were involved in the case earlier on. Their testimonies painted a picture for the jury of a deep, escalating beef between Tupac Shakur music label Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records, which has ties to Keefe D and represented Biggie Smalls. Woo! A lot of people are now saying, okay, they got him on the Tupac Shakur stuff. What about the Biggie Smalls stuff? Because I think Puffy name is going to be called up at some point, because the street says that Puffy was the one who paid Keefe D to put that $1 million hit out, and those bounty hunters, or those headhunters rather, they went to collect. No disrespect to the bounty hunters, which is a real organization out there in LA. I'm not talking about them. When I say bounty hunter, I actually mean like a bounty hunter, somebody that, those bounty hunters, if you skip bail and the bondsman didn't get his money worth, they send the bounty hunters to come get you, like that. So there are people who ride around and they have ears to the streets, to the underground, and say $1 million hit was put out on somebody's head. They organize their team, they go commit the $1 million hit, and then connect with the people who's paying the money and get that $1 million. It's rumored that this was the case with Biggie Smalls, Bad Boy Records, and Puffy, or P. Diddy Combs. So people are now saying, oh damn, I wonder if it's actually true. Well, at this point, it's going to be up to how much evidence the law was able to gather. And it's also going to be up to how much Keefe D is willing to say when he goes before the courts. Because if he goes before the courts and start calling names and saying this person sanctioned the hit and we carried it out. Listen, man, I'm 60 years old. I ain't got much longer to live. And let me tell you, I don't want to spend the rest of my good days, my rest of my other half of my life in prison. So cut me a deal. Just like how y'all cut me a deal with the drug case and I gave you all the information about the Tupac Shakur murder, but I got immunity for everything I said in the room, so I couldn't be prosecuted, maybe you could cut me one of those same kind of deals. I could help you bring down a billionaire. I could help you crack this wide open. There's going to be publicity all over this. Hey, he better, I'm telling you right now, Puffy is probably like, that boy better not call my name. But we'll see how it turns out. That could just be just salacious story, right? And Puffy really has nothing to do with it, so he has nothing to worry about. But that's what's being talked about right now. Now, that started a whole East Coast, West Coast beef. Everybody remembers that, who's old enough to remember it, when Bad Boy went to war with Death Row Records, and Death Row Records went to war with Bad Boy, and it divided the coasts. That rivalry primarily defined the hip-hop scene back in the 90s. One of Keefe D's former associates testified this information. Davis denied an interview, or Keffe D. He denied an interview request on Friday from jail. And court records don't list any attorney who can comment on his behalf. So they can't hear from him, and he ain't doing no interviews. Phone and text messages to his wife on Friday and in the months raided their home in the nearby city of Henderson. So all those phone text messages to the wives, they're going unanswered. Their home got raided, right, on July 17. And no, but basically she's not speaking. He's not speaking. In a statement on Friday, Sekiwa Set Shakur, Tupac Shakur's sister, she described the arrest of Keefe D as a victory, but in a measured tone. She said, "This is no doubt a pivotal moment. The silence of the past 27 years surrounding this case has spoken loudly in our community. In other words, a lot of people knew who did it, and we knew that the police knew who did it. So we started wondering, is the police involved in this? And if you think about it, the police was involved in this, because had the police not cut a deal with Keefe D, this would have went public, that Tupac Shakur's murder was solved, right?" She said, "That's important to me that the world, the country, the justice system, our people acknowledge the gravity of the passing of this man, my brother, my mother's son, my father's son." She gave no praises to the authorities who have worked the case. Why? Because she feels like they were behind keeping it a secret all along, which according to Keefe D is exactly what happened. Quote unquote, she said, "I know there's been many people who did not believe that the murder of Tupac Shakur was important to this police department." Sheriff Kevin McCahill, he said that in a news conference on Friday. "I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case. It was not the case back then, and it is not the case today." He added, "Every single victim, every life that is lost is important and remains a priority to this police department." On the night of September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur and Death Row Records founder Marion Suge Knight, they were in Las Vegas to watch Mike Tyson, the heavyweight title fight. Outside of the fight, just after it ended, they got involved in a brawl with Keefe D and his nephew, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, cold street killer, with whom Tupac Shakur had a feud previously. Now, later that night, Tupac was sitting in a BMW, and of course, Marion Suge Knight was driving when a Cadillac pulled up next to them and gunfire erupted. Ba, 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 ba. Tupac Shakur was shot multiple times, and he died a week later at the age of 25. Keefe D, in his memoir, said that he was in the front passenger seat of that Cadillac, and he had slipped the gun into the back seat from where he said the shots were fired. In other words, he straight up said, "I gave them the murder weapon." He implicated Baby Lane Anderson, which is his nephew, saying that he was one of the two people that was in the back seat. Baby Lane, though, He died 2 years after Keffe D had made that confession. He denied any involvement, though, in Tupac Shakur's murder around that time. The rapper's death came as his fourth solo album, All Eyes on Me, remained on the charts with some 5 million copies sold, got nominated 6 times for Grammy Award. Shakur is still largely considered one of the best and the most influential and versatile rapper of all time. He also is considered a legend, an icon, an activist, amongst many other things. May his soul rest in peace, and I hope that this also leads to not Tupac Shakur, but Biggie Smalls' murder being solved as well. We'll stay tuned to this to see what happens next and how much Keefe D is going to say, if anybody is going to be implemented in this that is of high power, like maybe he calls Puffy name. We don't know, but stay tuned to the channel and we'll stay tuned to the story and we'll get it together. I'll catch y'all on the next video, man. It's Hot Topics TV, BrainFLoTv. I'm out. Peace.